We see it across the valley, the housing shortage, an affordability crisis, high mortgage rates, inflation. So many factors. They're causing challenges for the average American and Nevadan to buy a home.
That affordability hasn't become just an issue for folks who are lower income or extremely low income, but affordability has become an issue for folks along the entire housing.
What's happening in Nevada's housing market looks worse than the bubble that burst in 2008. Back then, values collapsed almost overnight, erasing trillions in wealth. Now, in towns across Nevada, we're seeing the same setup. Home prices that doubled or tripled in just 3 years, while local incomes barely budged. Inventories are surging 80 to 112% year over year, and nearly half of all listings carry price cuts. It's a textbook disconnect between affordability and reality. And while mainstream coverage still paints Nevada as a retirement haven, the numbers tell a much darker story. Miss this now, and you'll be months behind the curve. Stay with me as we uncover the 10 cities where the crash is already taking shape. Number 10, Mesquite. Las Vegas gets the headlines, but 90 miles northeast, a quiet disaster is unfolding. This retirement haven along the Utah border once promised affordable desert living. Now it's becoming a cautionary tale about what happens when speculation meets reality. Home prices here peaked at $450,000, triple their pre-pandemic levels. Local median income, barely $60,000 annually. The math never worked, but nobody cared during the frenzy. Now reality is biting hard. Housing inventory has skyrocketed 83% year over year. Days on market stretched from 12 to 54. Over 40% of listings carry price reductions, with some homes marked down $30,000 or more. Open houses that once drew crowds now sit empty. The buyer profile tells the story. Retirees on fixed incomes can't afford 7% mortgages on inflated prices. California investors are retreating to safer markets. Local buyers were priced out long ago. The tourism-dependent economy isn't generating enough high-paying jobs to support current valuations. Recent wildfire insurance increases add another burden. Some policies jump 40% overnight. Property taxes are rising as cash-strapped local governments need revenue. The total monthly cost of home ownership is becoming crushing for a community built on affordability. Here's the kicker. New construction continues flooding the market. Builders who broke ground during the boom are completing projects into an oversaturated market. Supply is overwhelming demand in spectacular fashion. Real estate agents report buyers making offers $20,000 to $30,000 below asking price, and still getting rejected by stubborn sellers. This standoff can't last. When sellers finally capitulate, the price discovery process could be brutal. For a city that marketed itself as retirement paradise, the current housing market feels more like purgatory. The crash isn't coming, it's already here. Number 9, Fernley. 25 miles east of Reno sits a cautionary tale about boom and bust speculation. This former railroad town exploded during the California exodus, promising small-town charm at big city prices. Now it's learning that gravity applies to housing markets too. Median prices rocketed from $200,000 to $475,000 in just 3 years. The local economy, anchored by agriculture and light industry, never evolved to support these valuations. Average household income hovers around $55,000, making current prices mathematically impossible for most residents. The market correction is swift and merciless. Inventory surged 67% in 12 months. Homes sit unsold for 2 months or longer. Nearly half of all listings show price cuts, some exceeding $50,000. The bidding wars that defined 2021 have become buyer strikes in 2024. California refugee buyers are vanishing as remote work policies tighten. The commute to Reno, once tolerable for tech workers, now feels punishing as gas prices remain elevated. Local jobs in warehousing and logistics pay $30,000 to $40,000 annually, nowhere near enough to afford median-priced homes. The rental market offers no relief. Landlords who converted properties during the boom are struggling with vacancies. Some are converting back to owner-occupied housing, flooding an already saturated market. Property management companies report rental applications down 70% from peak levels. But here's what's really concerning. The industrial base that supported modest home prices is shrinking. Several manufacturing facilities have downsized or relocated. The economic foundation beneath the housing market is cracking. Real estate professionals privately acknowledge that prices need to fall 30 to 40% to align with local fundamentals. That's not a correction. That's a crash waiting to happen. Number 8, Elko. In Nevada's remote northeast corner, the mining boom that drove housing demand is fading fast. This high desert town, dependent on gold and copper extraction, built its housing market on commodity prices that have since reversed course. Now it's facing a reckoning that could reshape the entire region. Home prices here doubled to $380,000 during the pandemic frenzy. Mining salaries supported higher valuations temporarily, but commodity markets are cyclical. Gold prices have stabilized. Copper demand is softening. Mining companies are cutting costs, which means fewer high-paying jobs. The housing market is responding predictably. Inventory jumped 71% as mining families relocate for work. Days on market stretched from 15 to 63. Price reductions appear on 38% of listings, with sellers slashing $20,000 to $40,000 to attract buyers. The buyer pool is evaporating systematically. Mining executives who transferred in during the boom are transferring out. Local service workers were priced out years ago. California investors never showed much interest in a remote mining town. Who's left to buy? Geographic isolation amplifies the problem. The nearest major city is Salt Lake City, 4 hours away. Limited flights from the regional airport. Harsh winters that newcomers underestimated. The lifestyle sells itself to some, but the market for remote desert living is narrow. Recent federal mining policy changes add uncertainty. Environmental regulations are tightening. Some operations face permit challenges. The industry that built this housing market is navigating headwinds that could last years. Mining boomtowns have a long history of spectacular busts. The warning signs in Elko suggest history is repeating itself with modern efficiency. Number 7. ELY. Deep in Nevada's vast interior, a perfect storm is brewing in the housing market. This historic mining town, population 3,800, experienced an unlikely real estate boom that defied logic. Now, market forces are reasserting themselves with predictable results. Home prices in this remote outpost surged to $290,000, astronomical for an area where median household income barely reaches $42,000 annually. The math was always impossible, but speculative fever ignored fundamentals. Reality is now demanding payment. Market indicators are flashing red across the board. Housing inventory increased 89% in 18 months. Average days on market jumped from 8 to 71. Over 43% of listings show price cuts, some approaching 20% of asking price. The economic foundation is crumbling beneath inflated home values. The copper mine that anchored employment is scaling back operations. Tourism to nearby Great Basin National Park is seasonal and limited. Government jobs provide stability but not growth. The local economy simply cannot generate enough high-paying positions to support current housing costs. California buyers who briefly considered rural Nevada are retreating to more accessible locations. Mining families are following job opportunities elsewhere. Young locals leave for college and don't return. The demographic trends all point toward housing demand destruction. Recent infrastructure challenges add another burden. The aging power grid struggles with new developments. Water rights are complex and expensive. Septic systems limit density. The cost of supporting new housing often exceeds the tax revenue it generates. Property tax assessments lag market reality by years. When they catch up, homeowners will face substantial increases. Combined with insurance hikes and maintenance costs, the total cost of ownership is becoming prohibitive. For a town that briefly tasted real estate prosperity, the hangover is going to be severe. Number 6. Fallon. 60 miles east of Reno, this agricultural community got swept up in the statewide housing frenzy despite having little economic justification for higher prices. Now it's experiencing a textbook example of what happens when speculation meets rural reality. The numbers tell a sobering story. Median home prices climbed from $180,000 to $360,000 in just 4 years. Local wages, anchored by farming, ranching, and the Naval Air Station, remained flat. The disconnect between housing costs and earning power has reached breaking point. Market dynamics are shifting dramatically. Inventory surged 64% as sellers realize buyers have disappeared. Days on market extended from 22 to 58. 36% of listings now show price reductions, with some homes marked down $30,000 to $50,000. The buyer demographic has completely changed. Military families face constant reassignment uncertainty. Farming operations generate inconsistent income. Commuters to Reno are reconsidering as gas costs mount. The California investor class never showed sustained interest in rural Nevada markets. Local economic conditions aren't improving. Drought affects agricultural operations. Water rights disputes create uncertainty. The Naval Air Station, while stable, doesn't generate enough civilian employment to drive housing demand. Recent federal budget discussions mention potential base realignment, adding another layer of uncertainty. Housing quality issues are emerging as another obstacle. Many properties were built quickly during the boom with minimal oversight. Septic systems, well water, and rural electrical service require expensive maintenance. First-time buyers are discovering that rural home ownership costs more than suburban alternatives. Real estate professionals privately acknowledge that prices may need to fall 40 to 50% to reach sustainable levels. That's not a market correction, that's a complete reset. Number 5. Yerington. This small agricultural town in western Nevada exemplifies the dangers of housing speculation in markets with limited economic foundations. What started as an affordable alternative to California costs has become a cautionary tale about bubble dynamics in rural America. The transformation was rapid and unsustainable. Home prices rocketed from $140,000 to $320,000 as California refugees sought affordable living. Local wages, primarily from agriculture, small business, and government work, averaged $38,000 annually. The affordability equation never made sense. Current market conditions reflect this fundamental mismatch. Housing inventory has exploded by 78% as reality sets in. Days on market stretch from 14 to 67. Nearly half of all listings display price cuts, with reductions often exceeding $25,000. The economic base offers no support for elevated housing costs. The copper mine that once provided high-paying jobs closed years ago. Agriculture faces drought challenges and commodity price volatility. Tourism is minimal. Small businesses struggle with higher commercial rents and reduced consumer spending. Demographic trends are working against housing demand. Young people leave for college and career opportunities elsewhere. Retirees on fixed incomes can't afford current housing costs. California buyers are retreating to more accessible markets closer to urban centers. Infrastructure limitations compound the problem. Internet service remains unreliable. Medical facilities are basic. Shopping options are limited. The rural lifestyle appeals to some, but the market for expensive rural living is narrow. The rental market is also contracting. Landlords face vacancy rates approaching 25%. Property management is challenging in rural areas. Some owners are selling rather than dealing with ongoing maintenance and management issues. Market observers suggest that home prices may need to return to historical norms, potentially representing a 60% decline from peak values. That level of correction would qualify as a complete market collapse. Halfway in, and the cracks are obvious. But the top 5? That's where the real collapse is happening. Stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed. Number 4. Carlin. This former railroad town in northeastern Nevada experienced an improbable housing boom that defied every economic indicator. Now it's facing a market correction that could erase decades of modest growth and leave homeowners underwater for years. Home prices surged from $90,000 to $240,000, despite a local economy built on declining industries. The railroad downsized operations. Mining activity is intermittent. Population has been shrinking for decades. Every fundamental pointed toward lower, not higher, housing costs. Market reality is asserting itself with brutal efficiency. Inventory has increased 94% as sellers compete for non-existent buyers. Average days on market jumped from 19 to 83. Over 50% of listings show price cuts, with some reductions approaching 40% of original asking prices. The buyer pool has effectively disappeared. Railroad families are transferring to more active hubs. Mining workers follow opportunities elsewhere. Young locals leave for education and jobs. California investors never showed interest in remote northeastern Nevada. Who remains to purchase homes at any price? Economic conditions continued deteriorating. The Union Pacific Railroad reduced local employment by 30%. Environmental concerns affect potential mining expansion. Small businesses struggle as population declines. The economic foundation beneath the housing market is dissolving. The rental market offers no alternative. Vacancy rates exceed 30%. Landlords are converting to other uses or simply abandoning properties. The entire real estate ecosystem is contracting simultaneously. But here's the devastating truth. There may be no floor for home prices. Without economic anchors or geographic advantages, values could fall to land value plus minimal improvement costs. For homeowners who bought during the peak, the financial devastation could last decades. This isn't a correction. It's a complete market collapse waiting to happen. Number 3. West Wendover. Straddling the Nevada-Utah border, this casino town experienced a gambling boom in housing prices that's now busting in spectacular fashion. The community that built its economy on taking risk is discovering that real estate speculation carries its own dangerous odds. The housing surge was disconnected from local economics from the beginning. Median prices jumped from $160,000 to $340,000, while casino employment remained flat. Tourism revenue is volatile. Cross-border shopping provides some economic activity, but not enough to support inflated housing costs. Current market indicators suggest a complete demand collapse. Housing inventories surged 76% as sellers realized the buyer pool has evaporated. Days on market extended from 16 to 74. 47% of listings now carry price reductions, with some cuts exceeding $35,000. The economic base cannot support current housing valuations. Casino employment is cyclical and wage growth is minimal. Utah border restrictions limit some business opportunities. Tourism is seasonal and weather dependent. The local economy lacks diversity and growth potential. Demographic trends work against sustained housing demand. Casino workers often commute from Utah, where housing costs less. Young people leave for better opportunities. Retirees find limited services and entertainment options. The potential buyer demographic is shrinking. Recent regulatory changes affect the casino industry's stability. Environmental concerns impact tourism. Water usage restrictions could limit growth. The regulatory environment adds uncertainty to an already challenging economic situation. Real estate professionals suggest that prices may need to fall 50 to 60% to align with local economic realities. That level of decline would represent one of Nevada's most severe housing market collapses. Number 2, Pahrump. Just an hour west of Las Vegas, this high desert community became ground zero for California real estate refugees seeking affordable alternatives. Now it's becoming Exhibit A in what happens when housing speculation meets desert reality. And the results aren't pretty. The transformation was swift and unsustainable. Median home prices exploded from $170,000 to $420,000 as California buyers fled high costs and regulations. Local wages, primarily from small business, government, and retirement income, couldn't support the new price levels. The affordability that attracted buyers disappeared almost overnight. Market conditions now reflect this fundamental disconnect. Housing inventory has skyrocketed 91% as sellers compete desperately for shrinking buyer interest. Days on market jumped from 23 to 89. An astonishing 52% of listings show price cuts, with reductions often exceeding $50,000. The buyer demographic has completely shifted. California refugees are retreating to closer alternatives as remote work policies change. Las Vegas commuters are reconsidering the daily drive as gas costs mount. Retirees find limited services and entertainment. Local workers were priced out years ago. The market that drove demand has largely vanished. Infrastructure challenges compound the problems. The electrical grid struggles with rapid growth. Water rights are expensive and complex. Septic systems limit development density. Road maintenance lags behind growth. The cost of supporting new development often exceeds its tax contribution. Recent environmental issues add another layer of concern. Dust storms affect air quality and property maintenance. Summer temperatures exceed 100 degrees for months. Water restrictions could limit landscaping options. The desert lifestyle has hidden costs that buyers discover after purchase. For a community that marketed itself as an affordable California alternative, the current housing market represents a complete betrayal of that promise. Number 1, Laughlin. At the southern tip of Nevada, this Colorado River resort town represents the perfect storm of speculative excess meeting economic reality. What was supposed to be an affordable gaming and retirement paradise has become Nevada's most vulnerable housing market, and the crash is already underway. The numbers are staggering and unsustainable. Median home prices rocketed from $140,000 to $390,000 in less than 4 years. The local economy, built entirely on gaming, tourism, and retirement services, generates median wages of $35,000 annually. The mathematical impossibility of current prices is now undeniable. Market collapse indicators are everywhere. Housing inventory has exploded by 112% as desperate sellers flood the market. Days on market stretched from 12 to 96. An unprecedented 58% of listings carry price reductions, with some homes marked down $60,000 or more. The economic foundation is crumbling beneath the housing market. Casino revenue remains below pre-pandemic levels. Tourism is increasingly price-sensitive and seasonal. River recreation competes with Lake Tahoe and other destinations. The retirement demographic faces inflation pressure on fixed incomes. Every economic pillar is weakening simultaneously. Demographic trends spell disaster for housing demand. Retirees on fixed incomes can't afford 7% mortgages on inflated prices. California investors are retreating to markets with better fundamentals. Local service workers were priced out long ago. Young people leave for better opportunities elsewhere. The buyer pool has effectively disappeared. Recent developments make recovery unlikely. New casino construction has stalled. Several establishments reduced operations. Competition from tribal gaming in California intensifies. Sports betting changes customer behavior. The gaming industry that built this housing market is facing structural headwinds. For homeowners who bought during the peak, the financial devastation could be generational. This represents Nevada's most spectacular housing market failure in modern history. The writing is on the wall across Nevada's housing markets. From mining towns to casino hubs and retirement enclaves, speculation has collapsed into reality, and the results are severe. These aren't isolated corrections, but a systematic repricing of Nevada real estate as fundamentals finally catch up. Warren Buffett's warning about regional bubbles is playing out. When housing costs far exceed local incomes, sharp corrections are inevitable. With the Fed's rate hikes, remote work demand fading, and local economies under strain, prices face ongoing pressure. Homeowners, investors, and renters all need to adapt carefully, while local governments confront shrinking tax revenues. Recovery will take years, not months. Stay ahead of these shifts. Subscribe now for market signals and insights you won't hear anywhere else.